Hello, 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 and welcome to Producing in Pandemic. We are looking at our digital communication agreements right now. As always, communication agreements are an ongoing negotiation. So if there is anything on this agreed upon list of things that we have agreed upon for communicating, we can always bring them up later in our conversation if there's anything we want to shift or move to communicate with more clarity with each other. Hello, could you stop sharing the screen and I'll get us started? Welcome to session, is it 34? Are we on session 34? Hello, my friends. Welcome to session 34 of our non-hierarchical, anti-capitalist peer exchange for producing in pandemic, where we are learning and exchanging skill sets around digital producing and also producing in physically shared space with the safest models possible. We begin with our international survey where we invite everyone who's joined us to check in on where they are in the world, what it's like there, and what work you are currently working on, or if there have been any challenges or discoveries in your week as a producer. We do a decolonized greeting, so I will be sharing my name. I'll be giving my gender pronouns to interrupt gender discrimination. I'll be doing a land acknowledgement. If you have a question about what your native land is, we have in our notes a link to figure out where your native land is. We're non-hierarchical leadership, so we invite you to engage in the note-taking process with us. I'll also be stating a visual description of myself, listing my company affiliations, and describing my access needs. And the access check-in is a chance for us to interrupt ableism in the space, and everyone has access needs. So I'll state any if I have any, and if I don't have, if all of my access needs are being met, I will say all my access needs are met at this time. So I will introduce myself to model our beautiful introduction process and then invite everyone else to join us. And then after we've all introduced ourselves, there might be a little bit of crosstalk if there are some big issues that come up that we want to talk about immediately. But we also have some great guests here this week from Blindspot Collective. We are deeply excited to have them share their latest project, which was a transmedia, social justice, art, beautiful experience that I was so honored to audience for, and I look forward to them sharing their process and everyone asking tons of questions. Alas, I have to leave in about 10 minutes because I will be joining the Afro Society, I'm actually looking for the name of where I'm going. Well, all I know is that I'm teaching a bunch of BIPOC youth digital producing skills. So I will be spending some time in that space and very grateful for our shared leadership so that we can have multiple things happening at the same time. All right, so Claudia doing the introduction to model to begin. Also, frankly, that was me vamping a little bit because I like to give us 5 minutes of passing time. So we now are exactly at 10:05. My name is Claudia Alec. My gender pronouns are they, their, she, hers. You can use those interchangeably, and I will place my gender pronouns in the chat for additional accessibility. I'm speaking to you from the Bay Area, land of the Ohlone people. The people are still alive. I also now take this decolonized greeting moment to acknowledge that we live in a land that has concentration camps. And I am really looking forward to the day when I can say we don't have concentration camps in this country. I am co-president of the board of the Network of Ensemble Theaters. I am a board member for the Northwest Arts Streaming Hub, as well as an advisor for the HowlRound. And I am the executive producer of Calling Up Justice, a transmedia social justice practice. I'm a Black woman with I'm rocking a curly brown short hair today. I'm sitting in front of a virtual background that is a black box theater in Memphis. And I have a Black Lives Matter sign floating in the background. I have a muscle disorder, so you might see me look off in an opposite direction, or I might pull a face. I'm never pulling a face at something you've said. I'm pulling a face because I have one of my muscles that's pulling me. Things that I discovered this week. Oh, there's always so many. So I will share this. This is about teaching, actually, and teaching practice. Now, I've been teaching for years, so there's a lot of things that are part of my pedagogy and my approach that I'm still struggling to figure out how do you translate them to a digital platform. I'm working with a group of I just workshopped a workshop with a group of people who had different disabilities, and it was so deeply useful. And I realized I need to rehearse. I need to rehearse what it is to send the signal, assess if the signal has been received, and to embed and allow opportunities for people to reflect back to me. So that was one of the challenges and discoveries. What are the different platforms and apps and different ways I can communicate with people digitally, but also what are the different timings and flows that I need to integrate into my communication practices to actually make sure I've communicated clearly, that communication's been received, and that others have had a chance to communicate back as well. All right, so that was a random check-in for this week, but that's my check-in for this week. Check. Oh, and we practice I'm not calling on folks. We don't call on people. So just place your name in the chat and we'll just stack in the chat and you'll call on yourselves.
I'll go next to give a chance for people to queue up. Hello, my name is Khulud Sawaf. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm speaking to you from Fayetteville, Arkansas, the land of the Osage, the Quapaw, and the Caddo people. And I offer so much gratitude to their stewardship of this land and its resources. I am a director and deviser, and I'm part of the Calling Up Justice producing team. And my access needs are met. I might turn off my camera for a short period just because I need to there's some work for the apartment. I need to let them in for it possibly. And what else? My visual description, I am a Middle Eastern woman and I wear the hijab, the Muslim headscarf, which today is green. I have all the colors. And I'm sitting on a blue couch with a painting behind me of my home, Damascus, Syria. And what else? Discovery or challenge this week? Living something that is it wants to be a collective moment in isolation. It's very interesting moment to discover, to be like, oh, I can't share this in the physical space safely right now, and it was a challenge. That's my access. That's my check-in for today, and I'm passing it on to Catherine.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here with you. My name is Catherine Hannah Schrock. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am here in the Kumeyaay land, also called San Diego, California these days. I am part of Blindspot Collective. I'm the co-founder and co-director of Blindspot Collective, so I'll look forward to sharing with you all soon about Good Trouble, the piece Claudia mentioned. Let's see, my visual description, I am also a Middle Eastern woman, born in Egypt. I'm not wearing a headscarf. We're actually Coptic Christian, so but I have curly wet hair, dark curly wet hair, and brown skin, and thick eyebrows and a big nose, and I'm proud. So all my access needs are met in terms of physical access, I'll say. One discovery this week, I had the chance to share in an applied theater conference, and for the first time I tried forum theater. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, online, and it actually worked. So I'll just say that it worked, and that was joyful, and it was about it was a model about racism, and so it felt important to make it work in this moment. And I think I've covered everything. Forgive me if there's anything I missed. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Catherine. Rebecca Ennels. I use she, her pronouns. I'm on the land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, these days known as San Francisco Peninsula. On Mount Davidson, I'm grateful to Greg Castro and the other members of the Ramaytush for the work they are currently doing to remove the statues of Father Hunipero, which is important work right now. It's been, access needs are pretty well met. Very big temperature drop in the last week, which is messing with my allergies. I might need to get up and get more Benadryl. I have a pretty big allergy issue. Otherwise access needs are pretty good. You will see me occasionally knitting. This was my coping strategy in the last week for all of the election anxiety. And now I'm kind of like, it keeps me from doing this. And so might see me doing that. Visual description, I am a white woman with long brown hair. I'm wearing brown glasses and I'm sitting in front of a bookshelf and a lamp with a sort of beige walls, and I'm wearing a black turtleneck. Let's see, what else this week? Really, the last week I've been, I would say that the practice in my organization, I work with San Francisco Shakespeare Festival, we basically just sort of called off, we didn't call off work entirely, but we recognized that we weren't going to be very constructive and productive this week, and that was okay. So we didn't attempt to hold rehearsal, we didn't attempt to film anything, we had some editing going on an educational project we're doing and some curriculum work, but we sort of made it a very process week, that there were no major deadlines because we just knew we were going to be where we were, wherever we were, and that was going to be okay. So most meetings were kind of just that in the middle. And yeah, I would say that one beautiful share that came out of one meeting was the groundwater arts work on the Green New Theater, which really connects beautifully. If you haven't had a chance to look that up, I recommend it. It connects beautifully with social justice work. It is social justice work, and it also talks to me in a sort of transmedia way about how our land and our resources are more than just our human resources, that we also, our community includes our land, includes our sky, includes our weather, includes our animals who live here, are non-human creatures. And so that was a good reframe for me, and it helped me working in the field as I do of engagement, thinking a different way about community and what community actually is. And that's me. I'm not sure who's after me. Peter, no, yes.
Good morning, Peter Friedrich, dialing in from Choctaw land of Jackson, Mississippi. Pronouns he, his. My access needs are met. Currently scrambling to relaunch a unit we had a few weeks ago, which was connecting theater to voting registration, specifically in our neighboring state of Georgia. And the overwhelming question now is how to do it even better and how to make it even stronger. And of course, this is a college campus. This is very reliant on this great generation of 18, 19-year-olds. And I'm just challenged in the general sense of how to make this theatrical style renew itself at a time when young and older people alike are getting a little bit of screen fatigue. So it's one reason why I'm here. I'm just trying to really look for ways to make it fresh and new, so it gets even better at what we're up to. And thank you. I lost track of who is after me. I lost it in the chat. My apologies. Mars.
Hi, I'm Mars Wolf. I use they, them pronouns. I am calling in from the land of the Seminole people, Tampa Bay, Florida. I'm a writer, stage manager, and producer of a digital salon called Decipher. My access needs are met. I am a Black person sitting in a beige room There are some pictures on the wall, got some pattern blocking going on, have on a head wrap. One of the interesting things that that has come out of this week is just the conversations about what work comes next and what stories and perspectives are not necessarily necessary, but what perspectives and stories will just keep us moving forward and see that we live in a more inclusive, equitable world. So those were good conversations. Yeah. And I'll pass it along to Gosh.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Gosh, sometimes Sarah Goshman, but more often these days just Gosh. My pronouns are they, them. I am calling in from the land of the Massapequa people, which is a group of the Lenape, I have learned. I do not have a specific practice. I am a freelance stage manager primarily in the New York area at the moment. My visual description is I am a white person with short, asymmetrical, mostly green or teal hair. I'm wearing a blue V-neck shirt at the moment, and I turned off my self view because I find it's better to do Zoom that way for me. But I believe in the background probably there's some beige walls and maybe some jackets hanging on some hooks. I'm not exactly sure which part of the room you can fully see, but something like that in my bedroom. My access needs are currently being met, and I'm not working on any work at the moment. I think my only discovery from this week is just that I miss this group very much. I have not been here in a long time, and I really need to be part of these conversations, and it just feeds me in a way, and I'm just really happy to be back and see many of your faces again and some new ones as well. And I will pass it to Heather.
Hi, everybody. Heather Ondersma, she, her pronouns. Zooming in from the Chochenyo speaking Ohlone people, land of the Ohlone people, colonially known as Berkeley, California, and I'm a freelance director. I am a middle-aged white woman wearing glasses, and I have kind of grayish, reddish hair, ombre, pandemic hair. I'm wearing a reddish scarf, and I am coming off of a weekend of participating in the Women's Theater Festival. I just dropped it into the chat out of North Carolina. They just closed a festival, well, closed, but still streaming, festival of 40 plays by women plus playwrights. People who have identified as women, non-binary playwrights, people of all marginalized genders represented in this festival. If you have time to see it, that would be amazing. I had one show, which I'll also put in the chat. My kid was in 2 shows. Mickey had a show. I'll put Mickey Goldhaber's show in the chat as well. And my discovery was that I had texting in my show, and I did not make sure that the Zoom boxes were actually really as maximized as possible. Our OBS technician kind of did like this conservative view of it, where our background frame, I felt like, was really bigger than it needed to be because of the texting was so hard to read. Anyway, I also was trying to get the actor to get the phone as close as possible. Anyway, it was complicated. And if we'd had more than one go, we could have fixed it. So that was my all right, and I didn't put the text in the caption script, which was a big mistake on my part, because I thought, oh, we're just going to see it on the screen. But it was very hard to see on the screen. Anyway, some people got it, some people didn't. And I am passing on to Sabrina.
Hi, Sabrina Hamilton here. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I am coming to you from the traditional lands of the Nipmuc and the Pocumtuck tribes. And I run the Co-Festival of Performance here in what is now known as Belchertown, Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts. I have shoulder length, straight white hair, very pale skin, and I'm wearing a dark purple shirt in a peacock room. My access needs are met. And one of the challenges I've been facing this week is I am working for the Performance Project's First Generation Ensemble. They are youth from many different backgrounds, many of whom are immigrants, extraordinary theater company. And I am editing video for them that's going to be used in 2 different online settings. One is a conference where the audience will be mainly older kind of conference goers, another where it will be sort of peer youth. And I only have some time to do one edit, and I'm so torn. I think I would edit very differently. I want to edit differently for different audiences. Just the rhythm and the speed, whether I'm using quick cuts or dissolves or, keeping longer segments. And it's, if anybody has been facing similar things and has insights on that, I'd love to hear how you made your choices. And I think it's Rebecca who's next.
Yeah, other Rebecca. This is Rebecca P. She, hers. I'm speaking to you from Chochenyo Ohlone land, colonially known as Berkeley, California. I am a middle-aged white woman with my rebelliously pandemic, very orangey red hair tied in a side braid with my little blue glass earrings. And I'm sitting in my bedroom with an assortment of pragmatic items and theatrical rubble. So the dresser and the mirror are next to a very old suitcase and a large mask of a lamb head, like you do. I am the co-founder of Analog Theater. We were founded 2 months before the pandemic hit, and we intended to do only cutting edge 2nd century technology. And so we've had to push it forward. So my challenges this week are we have a showcase coming up with the Innovator Incubator program that Playground San Francisco does. And so we are producing virtual content for that. And it's a combination of pre-recorded. We do our first pre-recorded segment that will be part of a larger live event is happening tomorrow. And it's our first time where we finally got to hire a stage manager. So that was very exciting. And then so it's figuring out how to navigate that and hand off the reins of a lot of things to a stage manager, which is wonderful, but also complicated in a digital age where I can't physically hand them instructions for anything. And as an actor, which I was prior to this, I'm collaborating with 1448, which is the world's quickest theater festival that's being done virtually this year. I'm working, they have a company in Seattle, but I'm working with the folks that are based in England, where I did grad school. And so because it's all virtual, I can collaborate from Berkeley. And so we've been struggling to collaborate being a band where the members of the band are all over and literally even the world. And so using a lot of the usual things like Google Drive and Google Documents to get organized, but also Trello, which was new to me and which I found really helpful and awesome. So that was the exciting discovery, was that can help with these collaborations that wouldn't really otherwise be possible except for this digital platform. And that is me. I'll pass it to Tanya.
Thanks, Rebecca. Nice to see you all today. I'm Tanya Newmeyer. I use they, them pronouns. My access need is to be on this cell phone and move around on my lunch break. Finding myself able to stay for the whole session, which was unexpected and maybe the first time in a while and for a while. We'll see. Everything is always changing. My visual ID is I'm a white non-binary person in a 10 tree hat with a black collared shirt and a fancy ornate mirror behind me on a white wall. I have short hair and what else? I'm zooming in from the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Petun, the Mississauga of the New Credit. and land of the Anishinaabe people, which is colonially known as Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Despite being on the other side of the border, this week I'm feeling pretty worn out with just the cumulative impact of everything that as a world, a collective and communities we seem to be living through. And part of that is my own doing. So I'd like to present this learning back to you with a sort of laughing at myself. Because I mean, you know that I'm like, how many, if we're 14 or 15, I lost track, deep shows with the Toronto Poetry Slam, which I'm affiliated with, one of the collective members there. And we, from our first slam on March 14th, really quickly realize you need many hands on deck in order to do these online things. Sometimes even more than in a physical space because of the sort of traffic jam of how the technology works. And so then I went into hosting a show on Saturday night where I wasn't sure because it was in one of our most northern cities, Sudbury, Ontario. I wasn't sure how big it would be and if the volunteers would be there. So I kind of went into a show being like, I'll just do it all, which is ridiculous, right? Like all of us, I think, know that we need tech support for any production, let alone at a slam. There's a scorekeeper, a timekeeper, a bout manager, and now we've adapted the role of chat manager and security. And you know, sometimes in a small show, people can do many of those things. But just a reminder to get lots of support for all the productions that you're doing, because oh dear, I'm worn out, and that was my own foolishness. Yeah, I'm thinking of you. Yeah, right, Khulud, more support than you need. Thinking all of my American colleagues as you strategize for what's next, and looking forward to listening into the conversation and presentation today. I don't think there was anyone in the queue after me. There may have been something I missed. So I guess we're perhaps handing back to Khulud.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for sharing, for participating to this great exchange. Also, a reminder, thank you for putting all the links and all the exciting projects. If it's possible to also put them in the notes, but I can also later on collect all the chat and add them to the notes. But I just shared the link to the notes, and feel free to add links to participate to creating those notes so that someone who's not here can also benefit from this exchange. And it's so exciting to have you, Catherine. We're really looking forward to hearing the conversation and anything you want to share about the project, as well as the producing company, perhaps something about the process of the production, as well as the artistic, whatever you feel like. But without further ado, I'll hand it back to you. And thank you so much for being here and sharing.
Thank you, Khulud, and thank you all. I can feel the sort of deep history that you all have had, the journey that you've had together, and so I feel honored to kind of come in the middle of that and to be a guest with you. And yeah, I would love to focus on sharing about Good Trouble, as I know that that's of deep interest to this community. I'll give you a little bit of a background on me and on our company, and on our status in pandemic, since I know that's the topic at hand. And then I'd love to share just a few photos so you can get some visuals of Good Trouble as well. So I am the co-founder of Blindspot Collective, along with my colleague, Blake McCarty. My title is Director of Community Development, and his is Director of Artistic Development, but we consider ourselves co-directors, back to the decolonizing and non-hierarchical structure, because our work really values the intersection of social and artistic, development together. And so we take both those practices very, very seriously. So Good Trouble is a verbatim theater play, interview theater play, because Blindspot has the belief that representation and accessibility are critical, and that too often communities don't perceive theater to be for them or about them. And so we're interested in work like interview theater that really highlights particular communities and allows us to get past the media to up close views of people's worlds and lives. So in addition to verbatim theater as being one of our main kind of forms, we've only been around for 3.5 years, so we're young and still fleshing ourselves out and growing. But we also have a deep value in developing intimate site-specific work. We have produced, and my personal passion is in theater of the oppressed and forum theater that allows our audience members to come in to explore issues of injustice. So as you can tell, I mean, we tend to be right in there in the community in a very interactive way. It's very dependent on that audience participation. And so COVID has presented us, like many of you, with these distinct challenges of, but also with a kind of interesting opportunity as we as a company really consider ourselves to be trying to be socially responsive. So what does it mean in this moment to respond with, with some of these limitations and to even respond specifically to where we are as a society in this moment? That's a humbling process because there are a lot of places we are in this moment, but sort of asking that question and trying to pool together the people who care about those questions. So part of the pivot that we've made in seeking to creatively meet the limits of this pandemic moment is moving to more audio plays, opening up our mediums to include more music and filming some shows to make them accessible. And that's sort of, we spent the summer exploring how to do that, but again, because we have this deep value for participation, we wanted it to be not just a listening journey, but something that really activates the audience. In fact, the audience then can become the one kind of live component that theater is. So how can our audience members become this sort of to fill that gap of where actors can no longer in an audio play. So Good Trouble was a fast moving project. We realized around end of July, early August, that we kind of received status about a grant that had been deferred. And we got together with some of our collective members and we said, what is this moment? What is this time? What do we need? Who do we need to hear from? What's happening? And we decided together that this has been an incredible summer, but also the last few years for youth activism. And I'm sure many of you can attest that in our own local environments, we have observed youth at the forefront of our recent resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and beyond that, March for Our Lives and the Women's March and so on. Youth have often been at the forefront of that conversation, and are often not necessarily their leadership isn't necessarily taken seriously. And so again, in keeping with the blind spot, which is our interest, we thought, let's really give them the opportunity to be the voice of this piece. Meanwhile, we had just lost John Lewis, all of us, a great loss, a great symbol. And we thought, how can we follow the legacy of this incredible activist, love and civil action, which is at the heart of all activism, really. We are angry as activists because we are not unified, because we are not equal, we are not dignified. And it looks different. I think there was a real nonviolent resistance in the civil rights, but it's attached to it. So we said, we want to follow that movement. We want to uphold this idea of making some good trouble, that it's some necessary and important trouble. And so, we decided on researching and interviewing youth activists in San Diego and outside of San Diego. Most of our researched interviews where they were found interviews were from folks outside of the San Diego area. And then we did 40 plus interviews with young youth activists or Generation Z activists in primarily San Diego area and LA area. We also really wanted to make a point not only of, you know, having our interview subjects be Generation Z, but having our interviewers and our researchers. So we had a team of artivists that were early 20s, with the exception of Blake and myself. The co-founders were older. So we did the research, we did interviews. Blake and I then became the editors of the interviews, where we just, you know, those of you familiar with the verbatim process, you don't change any of the language, you just make selections and you create a flow. You kind of montage it together. Some of our characters were composite though, because we had so many amazing interviews. And then we cast the show with a wonderful cast of Generation Z actors, really diverse. And we held Zoom rehearsals. We had multiple assistant directors who would work in small groups with, you know, in the breakout rooms with actors to support them. Blake was our lead director for this. And as I moved in the direction of looking at outreach and community, the actors were recording on their phones, and then they would submit their recordings to our music. I forgot to mention, this is a musical theater piece as well. So we had composers and musicians that we brought into the creative process as well, who were also using the verbatim words to create their lyrics. But yeah, the actors submitted their voice, their song recordings to our musicians and composers, who then mixed it down, EQ'd, and then we had a sound designer who edited all the individual, you know, individually recorded. Basically, they were like monologues, and then he spliced them together. I'll say, you know, so the other medium that was of deep importance to us, aside from music, you know, again, to sort of counter the audio play piece, we wanted music to really energize it, songs as well as underscore. And then we also wanted to sort of tap into this sort of beloved community John Lewis spirit. And we thought, you know, one way to do that, in addition to having, you know, the ideas, the opinions of Generation Z activists sharing about their passion and their work, was to invite people into a sort of poetic reality, where the poet would sort of would come in at various points and synthesize the heart of justice, which, you know, we can say is a number of different things, but among them is love, and a call to bring people into beloved community. And so that was the role of our poet, who was the one voice who really spoke directly to our audiences. But the other thing the poet did, which is really exciting too for this particular piece, is the poet was the one who integrated prompts for our audiences to participate. So ultimately, you know, with poetry and music and interviews, we were then asking our audiences to meet in public parks, 8 different locations all over San Diego County. And then the final location was our national show, which I believe, I know that Claudia and maybe Khulud have participated in that somehow. So, so starting with the kind of San Diego local shows, audiences came, we asked them to bring headphones and to have their device We were live streaming it in audio only. And so, you know, there's so many things that were experimental about it. Oftentimes audiences came and they didn't read their emails, and so they didn't have their headset. And so we had a backup speaker for some people, but we had protest signs that were really just pulled out some phrases and words from the show. But it was pretty simple. We said, bring a lawn chair, bring a blanket, bring your headset, and gather physically distant with your mask and listen. And so, but throughout, as they were listening and as they were moving through the sort of stories of each of our characters, they were invited to participate physically, you know, to say their names, to chant with us this song, to throw up your fists in solidarity with humanity and keep them up, you know, to perform a lie-in, to listen, to breathe, right? So there were so throughout the piece, again, our audience became the ones who really activate the piece, and we were also, we needed to trust them, you know, like I think that we needed their energy. So we had a couple of our friends that we planted to help build that energy, you know, because we have a dance party at the end of it. So we need to get them moving. And as I'm sure you all know, like when one person begins, or, you know, the higher the fist, the others feel more compelled. And so we had little kind of moments like that of figuring things out as we went. We had a practice round with a few people we knew and tested some things out. We had to go to parks and drop locations at the precise place because a lot of these parks are really big. And so it was a really fun adventure, a lot of figuring things out. I have to say that the national tech piece, which I can share a little bit, to me remained a mystery for me, as I'm less of a tech-minded person. I actually asked my colleague I'm like, can you send me a blurb or something? Because I'm not even sure I know how to talk about this. But let me explain it to you in my terms, and then I'll explain kind of what happens there. So the final show was in a park in San Diego called Balboa Park, and that was the show that we sent out to as many, you know, in our outreach, as many kind of potential partners, whether they be theater companies or social justice advocates, nonprofits, people who were invested in some of the specific issues that came out of the show, which, you know, there are various social justice issues. And we asked them to either like spread the word or organize and participate with us. And on the day of the show, we're going to send you a Zoom link, and all you have to do is join the Zoom. And that would allow us basically to capture a video live stream in addition to overlaying the audio with it, right? So then a few of us were just at the events with devices, phones, iPads. We had a theater company from Chicago called the Midwives. We had a DC Olympia Family Theater Company. Galvanize also was in DC. We had another theater company that was I'm trying to remember now where they were. Is it Chicago, DC? I can't remember where the third one was located, but they're Who, What, Where Theater Collective organized listening parties, and they had their videos out. And then, so the final day, they were able to watch us while also video live streaming. And we were able to watch them, and we were able to aggregate footage that we then put on our like YouTube channel, in addition to some B-roll stuff. So it's stuff that, like I said, I have less of an understanding of how this actually worked. I'll tell you what, we brought on a wonderful live stream technician consultant. His name is Patrick Gates. He and Blake worked together. Blake is much more tech-minded than I am. But here's what they said. They said, we used one computer as a playback device, fed via a Thunderbolt-based capture unit into a second MacBook. Then the MacBook switched between video content via Open Broadcaster Software, or OBS, including the feed from the external computer playing the prepared video, which was just B-roll video, and the secondary monitor with all the Zoom feeds on it. Then they just kept switching between scenes. So I'll show you, if you want, you can actually, if you haven't already, you can see the final show because we wanted to keep it for the next couple of weeks on YouTube for free, accessible, so you can listen and watch. And you'll see us kind of doing our movements in different parts of the country and things like that. But that is the wonderful experiment of what Good Trouble became and was. We started around August 1st. The show went up October. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you some video too, or some photos. I'll show you a couple of photos a second. Actually, one quick second. And it also has all the dates. So it made me remember. Thank you. Making me co-host. Yeah, so we opened on October 17th. We ran only on the weekends so that we can be accessible 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. both Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, this is our artwork that Blake McCarty designed. Here they are in the grass. They've taken their shoes off. That was something that the poet asked them to do. They've got their fists up, their masks, they're physically distant. As you can see, they're listening, they've got their phones. Coincidentally, on this day, there was actually a protest happening. So this flag was not a flag we brought, this Black Lives Matter flag. It was one that happened to be passing by for another protest. This is the final moment is a dance party, because we believe that a big part of activism is the joy and resilience that's captured through movement and dance and body. This is just a different park that we were at. At the end of every show, we also held a conversation. We were hoping to get people's ideas, and we also invited various local nonprofit community partners to come and share what they were doing. And people from housing projects, youth activist entities, BLM entities, all kinds of folks came and would just share what they were doing. We dialogued about the impact of these issues, or how we're seeing these issues playing out in our personal spheres and our politics, and then the sort of, and what next, which now I think we're asking that in different ways, as someone mentioned on this call. This is a moment of remembering that the poet calls people into, and connecting with people who we can no longer connect with as well as we'd like in moments of pandemic. So yeah, that's kind of my my overview of Good Trouble. Of course, I'm interested to know. Thank you for the applause. And interested to know and what you're interested in, and answer any questions that I can. I can also, I will, Khulud, I should put this in the notes. I'm realizing I'll go ahead and put the what my colleagues sent me about the tech, where I was like, send me something because I don't know what I'm going to say about it.
That would be great. I tried to take as many notes as possible, but I was behind on that because I was like, what?
Totally.
I'm also not a tech-minded person.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is so exciting. I want to invite friends and colleagues to share any questions, whether you want to write it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
Hey, Catherine, thank you so much. That's really incredibly inspiring. I've actually while you were speaking, sharing these links out externally with an engagement team that I'm part of. We work with our neighbors here in San Francisco experiencing homelessness, and this is very much in line with the kind of work that we are hoping to do. So I was curious, very practical questions about the sort of transmedia aspect, the live in the park aspect. We often perform in parks and other community open outdoor spaces, which of course in pandemic will be very necessary, and we're looking to do that. And as we go into the summer of 2021, we assume that we're going to be in that kind of a hybrid transmedia space. Did you find, did people have to make reservations? Did you find you needed a lot of kind of hospitality staffing to get folks set up where they needed to be at distance? And did you need security to make sure people were compliant?
Actually, it's great questions. So yeah, initially we thought we were going to have to get permits, and we decided to sort of run like a protest essentially, and not permit it. But that required, you know, a plan of thinking through security. And so what we did is we had a lot of, you know, in our sort of blend of artivists, we had people who had been part of protests and were trained kind of less formally, but self-trained in security. So we had a lead security person who was just part of our artivist community. It was all, our practice has been nonviolence, and so we weren't anticipating we would need to go crazy on it. We weren't going to call 911, but we just had like de-escalation strategies that we discussed. So we had a lead person, and we had a support security who would then be the person who would go and just investigate anything in terms of like talking to someone who approached us. Sometimes the police would come and just stand and ask questions. So in terms of the security piece, it was much less of a problem than we thought in general, because you know, it was, but we were ready, and we trained ourselves, and we'd be happy to share the resource that we compiled for just how to kind of run that. And then, you know, there is, in this like higher tech space that we're in, it is really challenging, because no matter how clear you try to be in writing and emails, we did feel like people missed things. But to that end, I mean, we tried to communicate all the details on as many different platforms as possible to make sure people got there. So on our event, Facebook event page, on our website, in the email, where to go, drop a pin precisely here, parking there, like just sort of all those specifics, good signage. And then we had 5 or 6 of us there, even when there were only like, you know, 25 people, 25 audience members. We had 5 or 6 of us there at all times, just to be hosting the space. When we saw someone coming, you know, are you here for good trouble? And just, you know, as much as kind of paying attention. But the other interesting thing was that because it's in a public park, we could also just be like, you want to come be a part of this show? You know? So yeah, I would imagine, depending on, because we kept it so basic, we literally like just put a couple of dinky signs around, and, you know, we tried to keep it low profile. We didn't need permits and that sort of thing, depending on what what your companies are looking at and what kind of theater you're trying to do. Perhaps you can't as easily get around it. But did I cover your questions, Rebecca?
I had one more around, were people in general mask compliant? That was one of the things I was thinking about with security, was needing someone to really, just in some of the communities we go into, we do have some folks who might be inclined to be non-mask compliant, and what would we do in those situations? Yeah.
So we didn't have that issue. For us, it was, but we anticipated it. And so we had a box. We had sort of various supplies that we kept with us. We had clean disposable masks with us in case. So the plan was going to be that we offer a mask to anyone who didn't come with a mask. We were transparent about how we were keeping things clean. So we were wiping down chairs. We brought a few of our own chairs in case people forgot them. We also had hand sanitizer there with us. We had bottled water in case, because we were outdoors. And as people came, we had a little table where they were sort of registered, and we'd let them know what all we did, you know, and just a reminder, keep your masks on, and the chairs are all wiped down if you need to use it. But we never did have resistance to it, but we had the plan in case they were. We used a megaphone for in terms of volume and being able to hear when we made announcements in that sort of protest spirit. Yeah.
I heard it really resonated with me hearing the language about wanting the experience, the listening experience, to be active, and I was really curious if you found any way of community engagement specifically. That it sounds like that's something you're passionate about and your company really follows, and that's beautiful and really inspiring. I was curious if you found any ways to engage the community before you got to the physically shared space in the creation process.
Yeah, that's an important question, because I would say
I'm just like finding it hard to break through the screen and engage the audience. So that's why, or the community. That's why I'm curious.
yeah, no, it's so true. I would say really in terms of our process, we always try to bring the community with us prior in as much as we can, though it looks different to every process. And I would say it was more in the devising for this. So it was our interview subjects. It was also in our community outreach. So when we were asking for community partners to join us, we were telling them, you know, we share a passion. We'd love for you to be a part of this movement. We want to celebrate your work. Can we post about you? Can we hear about you? And can you also let people know about this in your network? So very much so, yes, but not so much around, we didn't hold like conversations or workshops or things like that where we were able to sort of gather in this way. Even it was just the process of devising and working with the interview subjects, which each interview is an hour long, making sure they all knew that the show to continue to be a part of the show themselves in any way they would want to. And then, yeah, just bringing along local partners to be with us and for us to point to them, because it was, I'll say this is something that was really exciting for me, is that I think as theater makers, we often are distracted by the idea of how are we going to sell tickets so that we can cover the cost of our show. And this was a free show because it was grant funded. And so, you know, we didn't have to sell. So we were able to just be freed up to be like, we just want to get as many people engaged. We want the people who are doing the work to be elevated and spotlighted and in the space with us. And it just felt like a pure movement. You know, as a person for myself, I'm so grassroots and activist, and there are parts of theater that I hate, you know? And so I felt like we were able to shed that layer and just be like, I'm calling you. I have no ulterior motive except that we love, you know, we love Pride San Diego, and we want you to be with us, and we'd love you to, you know, share about your work. And so that was a piece that just felt so valuable, and maybe something I think for us potentially in this moment of pandemic to harness, you know, there is a sense of global community and a sense of, you know, let's just invite everybody, you know, and does it have to cost money if it's streamed in a particular way, or can it be super cheap in a way, or yeah, I realize that's not always the case, but for us in this moment, it was nice. It was a good relief.
Hi, thank you for sharing, and I really loved hearing about your poet and how you, handled audience engagement. I'm curious what that looks like for some of your other productions, audience engagement, and how you went about curating this audience script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in other verbatim pieces, I think part of how we do that, like one of the things we've started doing as a sort of technique in our verbatim pieces, is we create one character to be what we call the witness. And that person introduces the people sometimes, you know, the characters. That person looks audience members directly in the eye, you know, and that person sometimes sits by and models observing and taking in the stories of others, you know. So that's one piece it's a bit more subtle, you know, it's not directed at the audience, although we especially with our verbatim pieces, some more than others, we also invite our actors to really look at our audience members. You know, there's an intentional sort of eye contact, fourth wall breaking that we do even in verbatim work. We also, you know, there's one piece that was about a refugee community where actually I was the interviewer, and I went to a woman's house. She was an Iraqi refugee, and her husband. And when I came, it was her birthday, and she was so excited to have me there. You know, another friend had brought me, and her husband ran and got me cake and tea, and it was that beautiful Middle Eastern generous spirit. And so then I was like, this is the opening of the play. And so, and sure enough, you know, that's what we did. She came out and she saw the audience. You know, we captured that character, and she sent her husband to go get the cake, and she walked around and said, "Thank you. Oh, my hair is a little bit messy. I'm sorry, I was taking a nap, but I'm so happy to have you here." And, you know, so there's a sense, there's a bit of that. And then, you know, I think that where we have the most freedom to do this is in forum theater. Forum theater, you know, I'll just imagine that, you know, we have varying levels of familiarity with it, but it's a model that is entirely based on sort of breaking the audience's heart in such a way that the audience says, we need to do something about this. This story that just happened is not okay. It's the opposite of catharsis. And that's really how it was founded. Usually, you know, often sort of historically, you know, entertainment is like, oh, that was a beautiful play. Wipe your tears away. And we all go away feeling a little bit better about ourselves and the world. But this intentionally is like, break your heart. And then we're like, that's the story. Are we okay with that? And people are like, no. So then there's already this impetus to act. And sure enough, then that what we call the Joker pulls audience members in one at a time, safely. It's through a really carefully curated process. And we say, if you see something that you think either the potential allies or bystanders or the victim character, the protagonist themselves, could have said or done differently, stop the play. They stop the play. And again, it is, you know, through a process by which we make them feel comfortable to do that. And then we invite them to enter in and role play. They replace an actor and they role play things that could have been said or done to change that tragic ending, you know. So it's super rich, really, really, really beautiful, so precarious. I think that's part of the sort of the thrill and the anxiety of this work, is like, we have to trust our audiences. And even in moments where we've been yelled at, because we've been yelled at by our audiences before, we have to say, I'm going to build with that. Like, I hear you, I feel you. You know, there's oppression brings up a lot of pain because it's about oppression. So that forum piece is like the most obvious way that we engage people. The third is in our site specific and immersive work. For example, we've gone to most recently we were in a performing arts residency at the San Diego airport. And so we had the opportunity to design and create plays for the airport, right? So like using the structures of the airport, using the sort of like energy of people moving, and And so talk about trying to problem solve there. But again, you know, one play that I supported the development of was about an autobiographical play where a guy was wanting to, the last place he saw his mom was at the San Diego airport before she took her life. And so he arrived with a bag and he sat down in the food court, and he just looked like a regular, you know, traveler. And then all of a sudden we heard a singing voice come through into the space, and everyone starts looking at each other. And then he stands up and they start singing to each other before he turns to them and tells the story, you know. So there's this like, there's that immersive quality of like, oh, he's not just a person here. This is a performance, but he's also telling an autobiographical story, and looking and being a storyteller and looking at the audience. And so we're always puzzling. I think, Mars, that's the question that we're always asking and puzzling around of like, how do we do this? How do we really bring them in? They are everything, especially from my perspective as the community brain, you know. The audience is everything. If all we're doing is just, you know, I'm an educator also, so it sort of connects to student-centered learning, you know, like if all I'm doing is just dropping information into the brains of our audience, of my students, then I failed somehow. So it is a constant puzzle of like, all right, how are we engaging them now? How are we bringing them in? So yeah, I feel like I kind of rambled a bit on that, but thank you for the question and for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Heather, for the note.
I wanted to ask, and I can't tell you how much everything's resonating with me, and I'm like in heaven. And I wanted to hear more about, I really love the element of empowering the audience as opposed to like I'm speaking to you, or like I'm teaching you, or. And I really love that element. And I'm wondering what you found helpful in sharing a different perspective. How do you bring them up to participate in an experience that's different? But I really do believe in that power, as opposed to like this experience, you don't know this experience, so I'm going to teach it to you. How do you put invisible or visible steps for them to climb with you and come up with you, as opposed to like, you're there and I'm going to teach you? Because I really love that, and that resonates with me so deeply.
Yes.
Whatever you're open to sharing. I know this is
Yeah.
a question culturally, so thank you.
No, of course. And I think, you know, the easiest, really the most clear example is simply the process of forum. So I'll share with you a bit about the most recent play, or I mentioned in part of the opening that I tested out a forum piece that's equipping in anti-racism and anti-bias. And it's actually for late elementary and early middle school. So now it's different in pandemic. So I'll tell you the kind of the origins of the piece. And then if you're interested, I can share how some of the adaptations are working. But first you have to have a simple set. We can't overwhelm them with complex theatrics. So there's a simplicity in the design of the whole thing to begin with, you know, because ultimately the idea is we want them to feel like they have to come on stage with us. So we always perform at level with them. There's no proscenium, elevated anything, you know, there's at level. On top of that, in the case of Safa's story, the way that I designed it was, in as much as I could circle the audience, I would. So like there's a moment where Safa does a race and she runs around and runs through and down the aisle, you know, so that the audience is like, oh, we're on stage right now, sort of. You know, there's already that happening. We begin as our audience members are arriving. And again, this is specifically a children's context, but it's like finding that tool for the group, whatever the group is. but as they're actually even coming into the room, we're on recess. We're all fifth graders. I'm a 42-year-old fifth grader in that play, and then once they're settled in, the bell rings and we sort of officially like go in play mode, and we start doing hide and go seek, and we hide next to someone, and they're like, "Don't tell them I'm here," and so we're really creating that space in a school, in this case, immediately. So then already they're sort of like, oh, they've already gotten up. Someone did jump rope, someone was hula hooping over there, and this person was playing monkey in the middle over here. And then we settle them in for the story. And we say, okay, now it's time for us to tell you a story. We're still going to ask you to call out some things from time to time, but listen for when we do and when we don't. That's my role. I'm the joker in that particular play, where I get to go look to the audience and be like, while still keeping their energy up with us, cheer on, she's about to do a race, go, yeah, so we can't just drop it on them suddenly. There's a whole sort of beginning journey of welcoming them as participants from the start. So then again, there's that, like, by ending in tragedy, in the case of Forum, it's like, we didn't fix it for you. She lost all her friends because of this. So what are you going to do? Have a conversation with the person next to you. Yeah, there's a dialogue with each other. Oh, now actually go ahead and stand up. Let's stretch. Let's all take a deep breath together. So there's sort of tools of breath, of standing, of community conversation. Even the actors start going out and saying, so what did you all think? What happened to Safa and how did you feel about it? So the actors, they themselves break the wall immediately after the show. So all this sort of mixing is happening, right? Yeah. So then we're also direct addressing when did Safa first become uncomfortable? Someone let us know, right? So it very quickly turns into a community space where they're talking to us, and we have a little bit of like a, can you look, now we're just talking to you. This is just real life. By the way, we're not actually in fifth grade. You could tell that though, right? We really break it. This is a game and you're now in it. Say hi to the actors if you haven't already, right? So there's just all kinds of like doing that after the show too. Yeah, but then we say, so we're going to go back to that part where you said things first started becoming uncomfortable for her, for Safa. And this time, if you see something that Safa or her peers could have said or done differently, stop the show, right? And then they still don't know what's coming, but they're stopping it, and we're hearing stops around, and then we say, I always just try to give people as much support as I can as the joker. Of my main line is, what would you like Safa to do differently? Oh, she needs to speak with more confidence. And then I'll be like, we could tell the actor to do that, but no one can really do your idea better than you, right? So there's this sort of enticing. Yeah, it's going to be no big deal. I'm going to be right there. The minute you've said what you want to say, we're just going to freeze the play. So it's a bit of coaching and setting the stage. But that's kind of the specifically Forum process, which is our most direct, audience participatory process. I feel like I told it like a children's theater person, which, I have a fair bit of that in me too. Thanks.
We're all wise children.
Yeah, indeed.
I want to offer the space for any other questions from the group, or reflections, or.
Yeah, absolutely. What else? Chat, absolutely. Yes, so much of what you're saying resonates with me so much. as someone who very kind of openly is constantly railing that in order to do something truly magical, I'm like, you don't need as much money as you think you need, but you can also pay your artists way more and invest in all of this like fancy otherness less than you think you need to make a thing that is of value. Like you can really make your budgets about the people making the work. And if you really do that, I'm like, you can do a lot with not very much. But in the spirit of that, what you're talking about is like so kind of beyond the ambitions that I think of as being available to me as a small theater maker. And so I'm just, and I know it's a big ask, like I'm curious if you're willing to share like what was the dollar amount of the grant that enabled you to do Good Trouble, and how many artists was that supporting in the end, since all of you are working at a very artistically at an extremely high level with a lot of thought and also a lot of like technical capacity that shit don't come for free.
It's
Like,
true.
so
yeah, no, I'm happy to share, total transparent for us. So we had, let's see, all the people involved. We had a sound designer, 2 composers. One of the composers also mixed down the music, so he had sort of 2 roles. We had another 5 artivist producers with us. So we're up to like 10 or so people. We also had a sound design mentor because we intentionally wanted to work with someone, a Generation Z sound designer, a new sound designer. So we had a mentor who we brought in and paid a stipend as well. So we're at 10 plus another 10 actors. So that's 20. The interview subjects were volunteers. So they were, sometimes we pay folks for their time, but these folks, we did not pay them for that. And they were okay with that. So, is that right? So it was at least 20, maybe 20, 22, and then Patrick, 21, 22, yeah. And it was, and our grant was for about 18,000. So if you think about all the different roles in there, you know, producers and directors and actors, I believe the actors' rate was 200 for their time each. We're still a little under, to be honest, for that many people. And that's, I mean, that's, unfortunately, I think as a small theater company as well, we have a little bit of a scarcity mentality at this point, you know. And so I often feel like I really wish we could pay more. I wish we would even like say we will pay more or we deserve more, but we're kind of still working our way up to like asking for more. And yeah, but I mean, it was reasonable. I think we did our best to sort of keep it on par with what we know to be the industry rates to a degree.
And just kind of a follow-up question. I know we're almost out of time. I could listen to you talk all the dang day. So that kind of in keeping with that, the question that I keep struggling with is, am I suggesting to people that I can pay them full time for a very small amount of time and that we're going to work really intensively? Or am I trying to create something where people can just be paid at least like more than the minimum wage for the hours they're putting in,
right?
But where the concept is that we're like spreading it out over like a super long process where it is presumed that people have full-time employment, or they're coming up with a way to support themselves all through a thing. And kind of balancing that. And so I'm wondering, in your cohort, do you have some people who are like super financially solid, who don't need this, who who are kind of holding it all up, or do you work intensively? Do you have a super long, like what kind of, I'm just always thinking of like, how can I translate this into a budget and advocate
Yeah.
with funders and things? So
Yeah, that's
that. I'm so.
I mean, I'm really right there with you in that puzzle. I will say that what we try to sort of, we have a collective of people who invest and reinvest and give a lot of their like time and passion. And in as much as we can, we try to offer them something as regularly as possible, because we also do education residencies. So we, even if they're not educators, we try to train them up into it, to be able to teach theater or theater for social justice, or so there's a smaller core of people who we just really try to look after. We all try to look after each other, of just like keeping in touch. What are you interested in? What are you looking for? And training them up if need be in some of the kind of the regular gigging work is the education work, whereas the acting and producing and directing is a little more sporadic. So there's that. I mean, there's nothing very formal about it. It's very informal, and I do think that in and of itself is problematic, because that means that we can't guarantee work, in a way that we just are like, we guarantee we're going to do our best, like I got you as much as I can, but we don't have the stability and the wide budget at this point to kind of guarantee work. And it is a sort of, it's probably about 12 or 15 of us that are in that kind of smaller cohort, the collective. Yeah, and there's just the legal questions around, is everybody supposed to be, are we moving everybody to hourly, and we're all just on minimum wage and trying to actually compensate accurately for time, that's a puzzle that we're still trying to kind of crack and figure out. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Rebecca, Blake and I are the only two, like, we're the co-directors and co-founders, and we're not really paid. We're not like regularly paid. We're like, oh, I think we have budget to throw in a stipend for us for some of the admin work we've done for the last 4 months. Good trouble, director, producer, go. Kind of like a little bit of budget there and there. So yeah, just the funding piece is always the tricky part. As a small company, we're just now eligible to apply for organizational support too. Like normally we were only getting project-based, grants and funding, even from foundations that, they want to fund a program, not a person. And so we're just now starting to qualify for some of that. So hopefully, I think we'll move toward more concrete ways of answering that question of like, here's what we think we can offer, and here's like a more, a system by which we pay, and here's the number we pay in an hourly. I just think we have to move that direction, but we're not there yet. But I'd welcome any other thoughts on that, that question.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any other last minute questions or reflections? Thank you.
For some reason, my copy paste is not working, but I promise you, once I figure out what's going on, I'll put a little bit about Good Trouble's like tech in there. I'll also put Blindspot's like website. I'll put Sofa Stories website, since I referenced that show, the anti-racism children's theater piece. But yeah, it might just be something funky.
Thank you so much. And thank you for whoever participated in creating the notes. Deeply appreciated. But I believe also Tanya came on camera to ask maybe a question or say anything.
Yeah, I did. Khalud, thank you for noticing. I mean, I mostly want to say thank you, Catherine. And I feel like I haven't had enough time or capacity to digest in the way that I need to, so that will come. But I guess I wanted to just invite, like, any sort of maybe closing remarks, or just an invitation to keep in touch. As you mentioned, like, a lot of us are thinking about sort of what's next. And I think a lot of our work, even in the Poetry Slam, definitely responds to the particular moment. So I'm sort of curious about where you landed with what
We are losing you, Tanya, I believe. Maybe internet or something.
Yeah.
But yes, please, stay in touch, and we would love to have you back
Yeah.
visiting or whatever your time.
Absolutely. I certainly would love to stay in touch. Is putting my information in the notes the best place for folks to reference, like my email address and things like that too? Okay, yeah.
If you are open to that, and if
Oh
you
yeah, for
prefer not
sure.
to have that in a notes that's shared with a big group, no worries. You can always like put the website, and then we're happy to pass your information if someone asks for it.
Okay,
That
yeah.
feels safer for whatever you're comfortable.
I'm pretty open, and I think more community is always good and better. So yeah, absolutely. I was trying to anticipate what Tanya's question was. I was like, was anything of final words, something I've learned? I'm not sure, so I won't try to. But I just feel bad that they were cut off in trying to offer. But yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful. Thank you all. I feel humbled that you have been so receptive and so kind and warm and interested. And we're definitely in the struggle here with you. And I do think that there's a sort of, there is a hopeful opportunity for us, as we kind of, yeah, there's in some ways in the same sort of vein as Theater of the Oppressed, of like conflict causes us to take action. I think we have felt like in this time of pandemic, we're like, now's the time. And in this time of the current administration, we're like, now's the time. So there are a lot of things that just really create this surge of, we can do this. We have to keep going. And there's hope and sort of like innovation and interesting things that come out of that. But for me, and I know for Blindspot as a company, at the heart of that is a collective, that we have each other. We're in this together. I know that's why you all have formed this together. And so there's Tanya. Yeah. I think I answered your question, but as best as I knew how to, even though you got cut off.
Thank you.
Yeah. It'll be in the recording.
Yeah, it looks like I better keep my video off, but thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward to more of these conversations. And if anyone has more suggestions for us, for guests or projects to invite for sharing, please let us know. We will see you whenever you're able to join us. And thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just see how they stop the recording. Here it is.